It was the 1960s and Point Pleasant, West Virginia was home to around 4,000 people. But one night in December, this quiet little town would be shocked by the appearance of a giant man with glowing red eyes. The local newspaper had been running stories about strange animal attacks that were happening in the area, and many people were beginning to speculate that there was some sort of wild animal living in the hills around town that was preying on livestock. Perhaps it was some sort of big cat, or maybe even a werewolf. They didn't know. Whatever the beast was, it was definitely a menace to society. That was until the creature decided to make an appearance right in the middle of town. A man named Roger Scarberry was driving home from work when he spotted something standing at the side of the road. The creature was humanoid, but covered in what appeared to be dark, coarse hair. Its most terrifying feature was its eyes, which glowed a bright red in the darkness. Roger slammed on the brakes and stared at the strange being. It took a few steps toward his car, then leaped into the air and flew straight up into the sky like a rocket. When it disappeared into the darkness, Roger was left screaming in terror. He rushed to the nearest payphone to call his wife and tell her not to go outside. Then he went straight to the police to report what he had seen. Of course, the cops didn't believe him. He might have been telling the truth, but back in the 1960s, nobody believed in creatures like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. So why would they believe that there was some sort of hairy monster living in their town? And how could anyone believe that a man had just flown through the air? Roger was desperate to convince them that there was danger in Point Pleasant, but no one listened. Over the next few weeks, Roger kept seeing the same creature all over town, and each time it made an appearance, it seemed more brazen than before. People started seeing it everywhere, at the football stadium, at the drive-in movies, even walking down the street. But the most disturbing thing was the eyes. Every single person who saw the monster described the same thing: glowing red orbs that burned with an otherworldly fire. What was this creature, and where did it come from? And more importantly, was it planning on attacking people? No. 9. Another close encounter. In January 1967, a man named Gene Harris was driving home from a night shift at the local paper mill. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes and turned his car around. Just up ahead, standing on the side of the road, was the same creature he had heard so much about. It was dark and bulky with long arms and legs. It was breathing heavily, and its eyes glowed a brilliant red in the darkness. Gene watched in disbelief as the creature turned and slowly began to walk toward him. In a panic, he floored it and sped away, but not before catching a good look at the monster. As it stood on the side of the road, shaking its fist at him, he swore he saw a cigarette dangling from its mouth. This was the first sighting that gave credence to the idea that the creature might not be a mindless animal. Could this monster actually be intelligent? When Gene got home, he told his wife what he had seen, and she didn't believe him. She thought he was making it up to get attention. But the next morning, he convinced her to go to the police station and listen to his story. But even after hearing everything, she still wasn't convinced. She thought he was crazy, and she refused to let him talk about the monster ever again. For a while, he didn't argue. Instead, he went to the police and filed a detailed report about what he had seen. But once again, the cops didn't believe him. They probably thought he was trying to cover up some sort of crime. But soon, everybody in town would witness the creature for themselves, and they would see that it was not just Gene and Roger who were crazy. Number 8. Silver Bridge collapses. On December 15, 1967, a crowd gathered in downtown Point Pleasant to watch the annual Christmas parade. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. Everyone looked around in confusion until they saw a massive crack developing on the nearby Silver Bridge. With a deafening roar, the bridge collapsed into the icy water below. Around 50 cars plunged into the river, along with 23 people who were standing on the bridge. Only a few people survived. In the chaos, people began pointing toward the sky and screaming in terror. Hovering above the wreckage of the bridge was the Mothman, the creature they had been seeing all over town. But now it was huge, like the size of a small airplane. Its wings were enormous, stretching as far as the eye could see. The Mothman circled the bridge several times, and witnesses said it let out a series of ear-piercing shrieks that echoed across the valley. Many people came to believe that the collapse of the bridge was somehow connected to the appearance of the monster. Was the monster responsible? Was it trying to send them a message? No one knew. All they knew was that the tragedy of the bridge had brought their worst fears to life, and now they needed answers. Number 7. An army of After the bridge collapsed, people started seeing the Mothman everywhere. It was hiding in the trees, watching them, waiting for its chance to strike. Families were torn apart as the monster snatched children from their beds and lovers from their arms. There was nowhere to hide from the creature. It lurked in every shadow, ready to pounce. As the sightings increased, so did the panic. People were too afraid to leave their homes, and the entire town descended into chaos. It was as if the Mothman had declared war on humanity and planned to wipe out every last human being. Some people tried to fight back. They formed vigilante groups and patrolled the streets at night, armed with guns and crossbows. But the Mothman was too quick. It dodged their bullets and swooped down to snatch their weapons away. It was as if the monster was taunting them, daring them to try and stop it. What had once been a sleepy little town was now a war zone, and there was nothing the humans could do to stop it. No. 6. John Keel and the UFO connection. As the chaos in Point Pleasant grew, a man named John Keel arrived in town. He was a writer who had become fascinated with the Mothman legend. He interviewed dozens of witnesses and collected hundreds of photographs and videos. What he found was that there was much more to the Mothman than anyone had imagined. Most of the people he spoke with described the monster as having glowing red eyes, enormous wings, and a strange, high-pitched voice. But some said it was intelligent, almost human-like. They claimed the creature could communicate with humans, and it was trying to warn them about the collapse of the bridge before it happened. John began to suspect that the Mothman was just a random creature that had appeared in Point Pleasant. It was an alien sent from another world. Maybe it had been watching them for years, studying their every move. And when it finally decided to reveal itself, it was too late. The damage was done. No. 5. Mass hysteria. By January 1968, the situation in Point Pleasant had become unbearable. People were fleeing the town in droves, and those who stayed behind lived in constant fear of the moth. It seemed like the monster was everywhere, and there was no way to escape its presence. Then suddenly, just as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. Over the next few weeks, sightings of the Mothman dropped dramatically, and people began to wonder if they had finally escaped its wrath. But the truth was much darker. The Mothman hadn't left town. It had simply gone into hiding, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. And when that moment came, it would be even more devastating than before. Number 4. The final sighting. On December 31st, 1969, a group of friends decided to venture into the woods near town. They had heard rumors that the Mothman was hiding in the area, and they wanted to get a closer look for themselves. But what they found was much more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. The creature was sitting on a log, and when it turned its head, they could see its glowing red eyes staring back at them. The friends panicked and ran as fast as they could. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of their homes, and when they told their story, no one believed them. They thought the friends were making it all up, but the truth was much more sinister. The Mothman had made one final appearance in Point Pleasant, and no one would ever forget it. 3. Theories abound. There are many theories as to what the Mothman could be. Some say it was a large bird, but there have been no confirmed sightings of any large birds in the area since the 1960s. Others claim it was a mutated canine, but this is highly unlikely. The most popular theory is that the Mothman was some sort of alien creature that came to Earth on a UFO. This may sound far-fetched, but there have been plenty of UFO sightings in the area, and many people believe that the Mothman was simply a visitor from another world. Number 2. Unexplainably phenomena. Besides the Mothman, there have been other unexplainable phenomena that have occurred in Point Pleasant. There have been strange lights in the sky, mysterious sounds in the forest, and even some unexplained deaths. Some people believe that these events are all connected and that Point Pleasant is simply a hotspot for paranormal activity. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is for sure. Point Pleasant is a town that will never forget the Mothman. Number 1. Legacy. The legend of the Mothman has lived on for decades. There have been books, movies, and even a TV show based on the creature. But despite all the attention, there is still no definitive answer as to what the Mothman could be. Some people believe it is nothing more than a figment of the imagination, while others claim it is a real creature that is still hiding in the woods near Point Pleasant. Whatever the truth may be, the legacy of the Mothman lives on, and every year on the anniversary of its first sighting, people gather in Point Pleasant to remember the creature and share their stories. Thanks for watching. What do you think the Mothman could be? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to stay tuned for more awesome videos. See you next time. Bye.